My first impressions of Tomb Raider The Angel of Darkness was not good. Coming fresh off of Tomb Raider 5, which overall I did not like, when I began Angel of Darkness, I was excited to see what the PlayStation 2 era would bring to Tomb Raider. But then, after playing a good hour of Angel of Darkness, I was afraid I was in for a bad game once again. I thought that everything I heard about Angel of Darkness was going to be true, but Jehovah God had other plans. Before we get further in this review, please make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and hit the hype button. I'm showing you where that is right now. I'm grateful for Jehovah God and Jesus Christ for bringing each and every one of you to my channel, as there's millions of people uploading on YouTube, but somehow you found me, and I know it's due to them. I'm grateful for each and every one of you for stopping by, and I hope you guys enjoy this review and enjoy the rest of your day. God bless, and let's get back into the review. This review is going to be a little bit different than the normal ones that I do. I want to start off by saying that yes, when I first booted up this game, I did not like it. I didn't like the controls. I didn't like how they changed how Lara moved around, and it just felt like I was in for a bad time. The funny thing about this is that I played Angel of Darkness, the beginning of it at least, while I was working on my Tomb Raider 5 review. And after I dropped my Tomb Raider 5 review, someone in the comments said that even Jehovah God wouldn't be able to make sense of this game. And although I thought that comment was funny because at that time, the only good thing I could say about Angel of Darkness in my notes was that Jehovah God blessed me with another day of life. Yes, the only good thing I can think of while playing the beginning part of Angel of Darkness was at least I'm alive to enjoy another day. But as I was reading that comment, I remembered that God can show you anything and do anything, so I left it up to him to show me whether this game was good or bad. And in the end, he showed me that this was a good game. So that's what mostly this review is going to be, me talking about the things I like about Angel of Darkness. Now, it's not to say that this game doesn't have any bad spots. There are bad spots. It's just that for me personally, they're not a big deal as I thought they were going to be when I first played it. But to be fair, I'll go over what those issues are. I'll say Angel of Darkness has a respectable amount of jank. That sounds crazy to say, but what that really means is that initially the controls aren't going to feel the greatest. It took me a while to get the hang of the controls and figure out which control scheme was best for me. Sticking to the tank controls was the best one for me. The 2003 controls, if you guys played this game back in 2003, I fully understand why you hated it because these controls are horrible. And then the modern controls aren't much better to me either. The tank controls just made sense, and as I did a little bit of research of Angel of Darkness, it's actually funny. Initially, this game was going to be strictly tank controls, and the modern controls, or rather analog stick controls, was kind of an afterthought. But I guess at that time, you know, they were pushing for analog sticks, so that's probably why the developers had to add it, and it wasn't added very well. Another issue with Angel of Darkness is that many of the systems that I do like in this game, you can tell aren't completed or finished. For example, there are a lot of RPG elements in this game that I'll go over, but you could tell that they weren't fully fleshed out. However, even though they're not fully fleshed out, they're not broken or unresponsive. So it's kind of more of a, I wish I could have got more out of them rather than it's actually an issue with the game. But at the same time, what we do have is a good game. And that's something I think a lot of people are forgetting, that what you do have is a good game. Now, that's just my opinion. Maybe you still disagree. But the more and more I hear people complain about Angel of Darkness, it's more complaining about what wasn't completed rather than what we got, was it good or not. I don't really hear people talk about it from that aspect, and that's why I want to focus on this review, because to me, I think this overall game is not only a good game, it's a great game. And the only Tomb Raider I would compare it to is the first Tomb Raider, which I think is the best one. I could probably argue that Angel of Darkness is as good, or if not better, than the first Tomb Raider, even with all its minor issues. And I want to be clear, I am playing the remastered version of Angel of Darkness. So for anyone that is talking about all the bugs and glitches that game had initially, I didn't experience any of those things. All I experienced was some wonky controls and some unfinished mechanics. And even that isn't enough to ruin this game or even make this game be considered bad in my eyes. Because to be fair, every Tomb Raider game had some mechanic that wasn't fully fleshed out. And this one's no different. And just like those games aren't bad because of that, this one isn't either. So let's get into what I liked about Angel of Darkness. Tomb Raider was built upon its grid-based system. If you looked at any floor in the Tomb Raider game, it looked like a floor of tiles. And these tiles helped you understand when and where Lara could jump. If Lara was at the end of a tile, by the time she get to the other end of it and you press the jump button, she would leap a certain amount of tiles. And as long as you kept this in mind, you would know if Lara could reach a ledge or not when you jumped. This has been completely removed, and this is for the betterment of Tomb Raider. Not only does this make the environment look more realistic, But it also makes Tomb Raider feel more like a free-flowing game rather than something that's very restrictive. The restrictive nature of Tomb Raider and its tile grid-based system was a benefit to consistency. That consistency is slightly lost, and now you need to use more of your brain power to judge a jump. Before, I didn't have to use any brain power. I knew that if I lined myself up on a tile a certain way and pressed the jump button or held the jump button before I ran, Lara will always make a jump at a certain distance every single time. And while that consistency is convenient to have in your mind, it does make the game significantly easier because once you know the rules of Tomb Raider, as long as the developers don't break their own rules, you're going to know you're going to make every single jump because it's nothing to think about. You know how it works and performs. Now in Angel of Darkness, there were a few times where I had to precisely line Lara up to make certain jumps, and this was never annoying. It was always fun to do. One of my favorite puzzles in this game was during this lava pit where you have to do these small hops on these small little platforms for Lara to get to her destination. If this was old school Tomb Raider, not only would a lot of these platforms not be able to move about while Lara's jumping because that would kind of break the grid system, but at the same time, I would know exactly what I need to do and how far I need to jump for each tile because I will be using the grid system. Instead, I have to think as a traditional platformer where I have to kind of remember subconsciously the distance at which Lara jumps and make a judgment call based upon that. There was another situation where Lara had to jump on these pillars. I had to line myself up just right to make certain jumps, which is something I didn't have to worry about doing in the classic Tomb Raider games because, again, the grid-based system was so consistent, you didn't have to think it through once you learned how it worked. Tomb Raider needed this change because as long as Tomb Raider stuck to the grid-based system, the platforming challenges would have never evolved. As for combat, this is where Tomb Raider takes a few steps forward, and I'm not going to say steps backwards, it's just they didn't make a step at all. Where no step was made was in most of the enemy's AI. Tomb Raider never had smart enemy AI. They kind of just stood there and shot at you or did like a few animations and that's it. Or there were animalistic enemies that will charge you. Practically the same thing here. They just do everything they did in the PlayStation 1 version of the games. They're a little bit smoother in their animations. They might be a little bit quicker to respond, but ultimately they behave just like they did in the PlayStation 1 era. They're not any more intelligent than before. The only type of enemy that I would say might be a little bit more smart are the certain guards and some of the sneaking missions, which we'll talk about later. Other than that, every other enemy behaves the same. But as far as combat goes on the player's end, this game has some of the best sounding guns in a Tomb Raider game to date. And I'm talking about even the newer Tomb Raider games. The guns in this game just sound dangerous. They sound like these are real firearms. I don't know what they did with the sound effects. I don't know if these are the original sound effects from the original Angel of Darkness or these are new sound effects for the remaster, but these guns sound amazing. They sound powerful. Guns have stopping power now. Matter of fact, there are enemies in this game that the only way to kill them, Lara has to shoot these skeleton dudes, and the only way she can kill them is by pushing them into hazards, which again, I don't recall any other Tomb Raider game having any form of stopping power or any physics when enemies took damage from guns. This game is actually a little bit more brutal. It's not crazy with its violence, but I remember I kicked open a door and there was a guard behind the door and I shot him point blank in the face, and I was like, he bled and stuff. I was like, wow, like this is not something you're accustomed to in Tomb Raider because it was more simplistic violence and stuff like that where Lara would shoot a guy and you might see a little speck of something pop out of him, but they would just take bullets like they were nothing. Now the enemies act a little bit more realistic, and thanks to the ragdoll physics, that adds to the realism in the feel of the game, and the combat overall is just great. Lara even has melee combat, and I like what they tried to do here. This is one of those mechanics I feel wasn't fully fleshed out, but what we do have here is good enough. She can punch, kick, and do a few combos, and anytime I found myself beating up a guard, it did work pretty well. So I can't say this mechanic is bad. It works as intended, it's just not fleshed out well. It seemed like they wanted to do more, but they only had a limited amount of time. Another new element to Tomb Raider Angel of Darkness that feeds into the combat is stealth mechanics. Lara can now go prone and crawl on the floor, and she can sneak up on guards this time around and knock them out, which is something she technically did in Tomb Raider 5. Guys should check out my review and how I figured that out in that game, but she can actually just do this without a cutscene being played. It's all in real time. And again, I have to say this, Tomb Raider, the Angel of Darkness in the collection, once again, does not come with a manual, so you will have to Google how to do this because the game doesn't give you a manual to tell you that this is even a mechanic. But once I figured it out, I was like, okay, cool, this is a nice addition to the game, something that they attempted to do in Tomb Raider 5, but fully fleshed it out. Matter of fact, a lot of mechanics in this game were fully fleshed out that I feel Tomb Raider 5 attempted to do. Sticking to the stealth elements, in Tomb Raider 5, there was a whole segment where Lara Croft is sneaking around a building, and I feel like when you have to break into the museum in this game, that was completely built upon the ideas that they were trying to do in Tomb Raider 5 on the PlayStation 1. Lara's jumping over laser beams, she's sneaking around guards. I love going into cover, shooting guards and tasing them. All of that was fun. And it worked well enough in this game where I felt like if Lara Croft, if they wanted to drift her off into a stealth-based game, they could pull it off pretty well, seeing as Lara Croft and what she does for a living already implies that she might be sneaking around in locations she's not supposed to be in. So adding stealth elements to Tomb Raider only made sense, and I feel like this game finally nailed it, even though it's very simplistic stealth mechanics. What helps with Angel of Darkness combat and even platforming feeling so good is that this game's new direction is more realistic than past Tomb Raider games. Yes, Lara Croft technically can jump higher than any other human being on the face of the planet, but overall, the things she does in this game just feel more grounded in reality. In the Tomb Raider games before Angel of Darkness, it was almost a given that anytime you were in combat, you were going to do some side jumping while shooting around because that was the way you would dodge attacks from enemies. Angel of Darkness is a little bit different. Can you still do that here? Yes, but 9 times out of 10, just shooting enemies like normal makes more sense to do, or going into cover and peeking around corners and taking pop shots makes more sense here because this game is a lot more realistic and you don't need to do these superhuman-like things to fight enemies anymore. It's still available for you. It just never was a time I felt I needed to do it outside of maybe this one ghost enemy, but other than that, you could just shoot enemies like normal. And even with the platforming challenges, there's one area in the game that you could say is the Tomb of Angel of Darkness. And here is where you'll be going through different elemental-based challenges. Think about past Tomb Raider games when you were in Egypt or any other place. Tomb Raider always felt like they gamified whatever world they were in. This one feels different. It feels like they were trying to make this Tomb Raider feel more realistic, like these are believable tombs, or even when you're in the city environments, these feel like believable cities that Lara has to traverse around rather than they gamify the city. One of the best levels to explain this is one of the earliest ones. Lara's in a nightclub and she has to sneak around, fight some guards, and do some platforming. They didn't gamify this environment. Instead, this environment feels like an abandoned nightclub. Everything seems plausible, even the things that Lara climbs on. Rusted out stairs and beams, and even some broken stage lights. There's a time where Lara needs to sneak through a factory, and once again, this feels like an actual factory and not like a gamified version of it. The past Tomb Raider games clearly would put things in realistic environments that would make no sense outside of a video game to give you a platforming challenge. Angel of Darkness somehow, some way was able to still give you a platforming challenge while making things seem plausible. Another new element introduced in Angel of Darkness are its RPG-like mechanics. There are times where Lara will make comments about things that she finds in the environment, and even have conversation with different NPCs throughout the story. To me, this is a great new addition to Tomb Raider. Lara Croft is a good video game character, but if we're being fair, a lot of what Lara Croft says and does is only shown in cutscenes. Most Tomb Raider games before Angel of Darkness were mostly about its gameplay. So the only time you got to really see Lara's personality is in the cutscenes, which were far and few between. Angel of Darkness is actually the first and last Tomb Raider game that we get to see the very first incarnation of Lara Croft's character speak and express herself in a deeper manner than she ever did before. It's not much, but it's enough for us to know what the original version of Lara was by playing Angel of Darkness. Despite what's going on, when Lara finds different things in the environment that intrigues her, you can hear the excitement in her voice. When Lara talks to different people, she's very straightforward and to the point, as this is not a laughing matter that's going on. She's being framed for murder and a lot of bad things are going on around her, and she's trying to get the information she needs as quickly as possible. Lara can come across as mean, but if you know her character well enough, you know that she's just more stern than anything. And depending upon who she's talking to and what's going on in the story, she may even change her tone and what she may say to somebody. Now, you do get two options when talking to NPCs, and this can change the context of the conversation. Lara can hold back information, or she can be more honest. I wouldn't be surprised if this was going to be a deeper mechanic, kind of like how the Fallout games have different dialogue choices, but we just have basically two choices to choose from. And funny enough, even with these two choices, these choices are deeper than Fallout 4's. The RPG-like influence doesn't stop there though, as Tomb Raider: The Angel of Darkness has a stamina system and a level up system. When Lara is hanging from different poles or climbing on ledges, there will be a stamina bar that pops up. Now, I gotta be honest here. This is one of those mechanics that doesn't harm the game in any type of way, and I'm explaining to you why. But it's also one of those mechanics that anyone can easily tell was not finished. So if we use a game like Tears of the Kingdom, where Link will exert himself and burn stamina, you could tell that in most games that have a stamina-like meter, the reason these meters exist in the first place is so that the player will have limitations on what they can and cannot do in any given moment. Angel of Darkness does this, but not really. See, anytime Lara has to climb something and you just don't have enough stamina to climb it, it just means that there's something in the environment that's really close by that Lara has to push or pull or open some type of door, and then she'll gain the strength to climb whatever she needs to climb. So it goes from being a system that if this was a traditional RPG or a game with RPG elements where Lara has to level up a certain stat, it goes from that to just basically being a checkpoint system. An early example, again, is in this nightclub. I wanted to open this door, but Lara didn't have the strength to. So I just had to find this one lever, and once I pulled it, she could then open this door. There's nothing you can do until you find this lever. So it just becomes a check system. Like, did you do this thing before you did this other thing? Because if you don't, you can't progress. That's what the stamina bar just becomes, because outside of that, the stamina bar serves no purpose. Once you have enough strength to reach your destination, you'll never fall unless you just purposely sit there and let the stamina bar run out, but there's no reason to do that. And you could tell that the developers wanted the stamina bar to feel like it was impacting the gameplay, because even once you level up Lara enough for her to reach her destination, normally they give you just enough stamina so that when you finally reach your goal, she just ran out of stamina. So clearly there is no room for gaining more stamina than not. It's no room for that. They're going to give you just enough to get by because it's designed to have a specific amount at any given time. There is no leveling up past it. So really this is an RPG element that they just did not complete and left it to be just kind of a weird checkpoint system. I don't really know what to say. It doesn't ruin the game in any form or fashion, but it is one of those things that I think even if you don't know anything about game development, just as someone, if you play enough video games, you'll be like, this seems like this was supposed to be more than what it is, but it's not. But it's not going to ruin anything. The only other new thing added to Angel of Darkness is for the first time in Tomb Raider, you can play as a different character. There's a new character named Curtis that's pretty mysterious, and he basically plays like Lara, although I do like the fact that they added the detail that he's not as athletic as her. The only major difference between Lara and Curtis is that he has some form of supernatural powers. In cutscenes, he will gain access to different doors by basically, I guess, using telepathy to explore the environment that he's not physically in to gain key codes. He also has this magical blade that he used, which you can actually use in combat. And I think this was actually one of the new things they added to Angel of Darkness in the remaster, as I think this was a cut mechanic in the original 2003 release, but in the remake, they actually made it playable. Honestly, using Curtis's special weapon doesn't really add much to the game. He gets some type of like magical shield and you could throw this thing at enemies and it does tons of damage, but overall, it works no differently than just using a gun. And he has this stupid stance, which makes him kind of slow to use, but it works perfectly fine. It's just kind of, you know, it's just different. It's more window dressing. It doesn't really change much of anything. Curtis and Lara basically play the same way as one another. Overall, I don't have anything really bad to say about Angel of Darkness outside of the respectable amount of jank and the unfinished mechanics that you can kind of tell are in this game. If you guys have been watching my reviews, normally there's a moment in these games where I get stuck, and instead of wanting to Google it and look it up, I pray to Jehovah God for him to explain it to me so that I'm not spoiled by anything. If you haven't noticed, I never brought anything up because there was never a time where I found myself in this moment, and that's thanks to him. For beginning to end, the Angel of Darkness has been a smooth experience outside of the very beginning of the game where I wasn't feeling the controls until I got the hang of them. There was one moment where I didn't know how to dive in the water, but that goes back to Tomb Raider Collection not giving you a manual. But other than that, the game is just smooth sailing. This is probably the best paced Tomb Raider game and actually the least complicated Tomb Raider game. Keep in mind the complication that came with Tomb Raider games oftentimes came with the developers not fully explaining mechanics, or there were just times that they were so busy trying to gamify the world that it just left the player kind of confused. There was one time I was stuck in Von Croy's house, but that was, again, something that God helped me to solve pretty quickly. I didn't get frustrated or anything like that trying to figure this out. It was just me overlooking an object that I picked up. Every time I found myself stuck, I was only stuck for like a few seconds, which is normal when you're playing through a game for the first time. There was never a moment where, like in Tomb Raider 5, I didn't know that Lara could sneak up behind someone and knock them out with a crowbar with a cutscene. That's just something that the game just literally never explains, and unless you Google it, you'll never know that that's something you can do in the game. That's probably one of the reasons why I love Angel of Darkness so much. It's one of the games that have the least amount of issues despite having probably the most amount of jank. Jank and issues aren't necessarily the same thing. The game doesn't feel that polished, but as far as you knowing what to do and where to go, yeah, you're never going to be lost in this game. It's not too much stuff going on, and there's never a time where the developers are too busy trying to trick you or confuse you or waste your time by stretching out a level to the point that you get confused on where you should go and what you should do. And that's another thing I love about this game. There was never a point in time where a level just took up so much of your time and overstayed its welcome. When you break into the museum, first it starts off as a sewer level, then you get into the museum, you do some stealthing around some lasers, then you finally get into this. Then you get into this construction light level with a small puzzle, one of the best puzzles in Tomb Raider history, where you have to pull these levers down and, you know, match up these shapes. It was something that was confusing enough where you had to stop and think about it, but not too deep where it just didn't make any sense, which is my favorite type of puzzles. Then you go into the game's one and only tomb, which I will call a tomb, and there's tons of puzzles down here. They all have different elemental base. Some of them are based upon your platforming skills. Some of them are combat challenges. Some of them require you to be very quick with your swimming ability. All of this just worked really well. Then you're back in the museum, but this time it's different. Now you have to mostly do combat in the museum, and you really can't sneak around. Now you got to go in guns blazing. So even though you're back in the museum, you're doing something totally different than before. Now you're going in just shooting up all the bad guys. And I love this because when this game first begins, you're basically just doing platforming and sneaking around. Then you get a little bit of action where you're getting hunted by the police. Then it goes from that to the RPG elements of talking to different NPCs in the world. Then you're thrown into the nightclub where you get to do some shooting and platforming. And the game just knows how to go from one different type of gameplay element to the other in a smooth transition, so you're never bored and you're always doing something new, but also doing something familiar, so the game isn't just introducing new mechanics out of the blue like some of the past Tomb Raider games did. So overall, I have to say Angel of Darkness is my favorite Tomb Raider, and if this game was just completely finished and polished with all the extra levels and bells and whistles that this game was supposed to have, it could have been a better game. But honestly, if they just took the game that we have now and polished it to a pristine condition, which I feel the remake is, like I said, still a little bit janky, but tolerable. The original version, just like I said, Google it, download the emulator, you can see how buggy that was. That just seemed unreasonable. I can understand why people hated that. But what we have here is just a really good game, a great game even. It just has a few issues, and if they could patch it and fix all the issues here, we have a great game here. A lot of people complain about all the missing content that Angel of Darkness didn't have. And to me, I personally think what we got is fine. I like what we got. In fact, this version of the game actually has Lara have her dual pistols, which is something that people complained about back in the day. A lot of people associate Lara with her dual pistols, and I understand that. To me, Lara is deeper than her dual pistols. I did not miss them at all, nor did I unlock them in my playthrough. I know how to unlock them now. I just didn't do it in my first playthrough because I wasn't trying to spoil myself or anything. And I just assumed they weren't in the game, which I guess technically they weren't originally, but in the remake they added them. I didn't miss any of that stuff. I thought the guns that I had were fun. They all worked well, and I didn't care that she didn't have her dual pistols, and it didn't break the game for me. But for some people, that's just the end all be all. And as for the story, this is one of the best stories that Tomb Raider has ever had. It's one of the most fleshed out stories. Now, there are some plot holes that we can talk about. For example, Lara is mad that Von Croy left her behind in Egypt, which is kind of weird because if you played Tomb Raider 5, you know he stayed behind to find her. So the game doesn't really explain that. I wish they did, but that is a plot hole. And there are some characters that Lara speaks to as if they met before, but they actually didn't. That's another plot hole. But overall, those don't ruin the story for me. I love this mystery that Angel of Darkness had. I'm not trying to spoil it for anybody because, again, this is my first time playing it. I knew nothing of the story, and I thought it was a great story, so I'm not going to spoil it for you here. I want you guys to experience for yourselves for the first time. So play the game or watch the story on YouTube yourselves, but I can tell you it's a great story. It finally adds mystery to Tomb Raider. You might think Tomb Raider stories always had mystery. I would disagree. Most Tomb Raider games never set up anything for the player to ponder about what's happening next. Those games just weren't doing that at the time. Those games were gameplay first, and the story was an addition onto the gameplay. This Tomb Raider feels like the story and the gameplay are one. They're just as important as the other. You're going to be motivated to clear Lara's name. Did she actually kill Von Croy? Is she being set up? What happened? What's with all these mysterious deaths going on in the city? The politics going on with the Mafia and the Cabal. Who is this mysterious guy, Curtis, that keeps popping up? He even outwits Lara, something that we haven't seen Lara go through, her being outwitted by someone or being challenged in any type of way, because Lara always seemed to be one step ahead of everybody that she ever faced. We finally met someone that's pretty much Lara's match. What are the Obscura Paintings? Why was Von Croy paranoid? All these questions you're going to want to know the answer to. And the gameplay and the story feed into one another. They don't feel like separate things, which again is a first for the franchise and the only game in the series where the original version of Lara Croft's character, they finally blend the narrative and the character of Lara Croft into its own gameplay and make both things just as important as one another. Before, I couldn't say the story in a Tomb Raider game was that important. You could honestly ignore it if you didn't really care that much, because most of the game was about its platforming challenges. The story was just icing on the cake. You didn't really learn much about Lara from Tomb Raider 1 to Tomb Raider, 5, outside of she had some friends you might have not known about, or as a kid she was adventuring about. What did you know about her? She's always kind of been cunning and smart, and she has acrobatic abilities and been confident. That's basically just all Lara ever was. In Tomb Raider, the Angel of Darkness, Lara seems to be a little bit scared, a little bit worried, a little bit unsure of herself, or at least unsure of what's going on around her. She still remains to be confident and cunning as well, but you also see her be more aggressive than before. She's not as snarky or sarcastic because this isn't the time for that. That you only get in Angel of Darkness. And I think that alone is a reason why you should play this game, because it finally blends the character of Lara Croft. It evolves the character of Lara Croft. Like, oddly enough, when Lara and Curtis interact with each other and listen, it was 2003. This is the type of stuff they were doing before anyone says anything. I understand that. I was around during the time. But when he's taking her guns away from her and he's like low-key filling her up, I don't know if they were intending to do this or maybe I just interpreted it wrong. It seemed like Lara didn't mind that too much, kind of weird. But even when they keep interacting, it seemed to be some type of sexual tension between the two. I've never seen Lara have any sexual tension with anybody because that's just not something they ever tried to push or imply in the games. I've never seen Lara be off her game because someone is just as good as her when it comes to fighting or platforming or whatever, but here comes Curtis, who's just as good as her. He was going to be a spin-off character with his own games. All that's new, all that's cool, all that built upon what Tomb Raider could have been, but unfortunately, the Angel of Darkness didn't do too well, and they just rebooted the whole franchise. But when it comes to Tomb Raider history, when it comes to just playing a good game, a great game even, you can't go wrong with playing the Angel of Darkness. That's my review for Tomb Raider, the Angel of Darkness. Let me know what you think in the comment section. Am I crazy? I don't think I am. Like I said, God can do anything. And he showed me that this game that most people hate is actually a really good game. I really can't say anything bad about it. Yes, it has, like I said, a respectable amount of jank. If anyone says, like, you know, some things that they could have ironed out here, sure. But you could say that about plenty of games that we think are amazing. Again, I'm not talking about the original release. I've seen what you guys went through, and I'm thankful to the Lord that I didn't go through that, because that game seemed horrible. But this version of Angel of Darkness, this is a solid game that I encourage everyone to play. It's actually one of the best games in the 4 through 6 collection. I would say it's even better than 4, and I really love Tomb Raider 4. It's probably the best game in the collection because at some points Tomb Raider 4 even outstayed its welcome and kind of was a little long in the tooth. Whereas Tomb Raider 6, Angel of Darkness, you're in, you're out, you're playing the game for maybe, you know, a weekend and some change. You know, if you got some time to really sit down and play a game, and you're having a blast the entire time. I never really got stuck. It never really was an issue. I never like sat there and said confused like past Tomb Raider games. It was just a great game. But let me know what you think in the comment section. Peace out, Key Gaming. God bless. Please make sure to like, comment, subscribe, hit the hype button. I'm showing you where that is on the screen again right now. Let me know what you think in the comment section. I hope you guys have a blessed day, a great day, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.